Hello everybody and welcome back to Space Engineers, where today I'm going to be showing you something very broken that I have found in this game. And yes, it is in some ways you could say more broken than the fact that you can move blocks through blocks, but then again that's kind of what this whole thing is about. I wanted to mess around a bit more with this whole fun thing of when you put a rotor head into a suspension, the grid which the rotor is attached to, the rotor part is attached to, does not have a collision with the grid that the suspension is attached to. And if you are new to this channel and you don't know, it's basically this, right? So if I push a load of blocks this way, just enough weight so it actually moves. Actually, you know what? Just put a big battery there. Or not. Oops. A big battery. Two big There you go. This can pass through completely without any kind of collisions because magic. However, the only downside to this is if I then replaced the collision zone with something where it had, you know, a subgrid. Just some kind of subgrid. It doesn't really matter what. So now, this yellow part is got a subgrid to this grey part. So if I go back to this blue one, I'm trying to make it as easy as I can for you guys to understand it. So if I put this big line of blocks here, you can see now it's got a collision. You can see now the collision is there. And if I remove it, collision, and the second that I remove this one, no collision. It will pass straight through this yellow. Okay? So that's what mechanism, or that's what broken thing we're using. And what I'm doing today is making turrets out of it. Because who doesn't want turrets which can, you know, be encased in armour? Yeah? Understand? So I'm going to be showing you through the process of what I've done. And yes, I have made it work. So if you aren't bothered about this part, feel free to skip to the end and you'll see what I've done. Okay, so starting off with my first sort of concept design, I was thinking, alright then, let's just get, you know, 3 of these, attach some guns to it, and it'll work, yeah? No. Right, so if I attach a gun, you know, to this, I'm like, it's alright. When you can't attach multiple because these all spin and it's very annoying. But there's also that they spin across themselves and they can't stay straight and it's a bit of a nightmare. Also, it creates clang. And this is when I shot it. It went hooey. So we moved past that. And we move to this idea that I had. So this is the same idea. Rotor suspension, the block, and then I'm using a rotor at the back here to be able to spin it. You can see. Yay! Spin it. Interesting sort of design. And then if I, let's say, shot it, you know, that's kind of cool. And yes, it does work if I move to here through blocks, so this is where I sort of got the idea. I was like, oh, that would be so cool to have a gun that can stick through armor and is just protected. Like, imagine that. That's so cool. However, I did want to test one thing over here. I wanted to make sure that if I did do this, that it wouldn't be invincible. So you can see that although the blocks can pass through, it's not invincible. So if we did have a gun sticking out, the gun wouldn't, you know, have infinite hit points. Just wanted to make sure that somehow it wouldn't have broken in that way, but it doesn't. So this was an interesting part. The main problem I had was when I shot at angles, it would try and change what angle it was facing. It wasn't very stable. Also, if you know, you try and find adjustment, it's not very easy to do it because it's a little bit, you know, it's relying on friction. So that's where I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to mess about with different gears and try and make that work. And I was like, oh god, this is way too bulky. I went through a load of different things, and I was like, no, this is not going to work. So this is where I came to this part. This was where I was starting to be like, oh, this is cool. So, you know, this one is just literally set to do absolutely nothing. And this one is set to, you know, angle it to whatever you want. That is cool. Also, if you made this one an advanced rotor, you'd have a pass-through. And then imagine having a gun, yeah? So now what you've got is one rotor and a gun, and the gun does not work. Why? Because it has to be on the other side. It has to be on the actual subgrid to what the suspension bit is on. So now, if I do it on this side, it passes straight through. Whoa! You see where I'm getting at? It's very cool, and this is where we get to this part. Look at this. I have guns which pass through. Let's see if can I. There we go. I have guns that pass through armor. Yeah. If you guys think this is really cool, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. I'm almost at 2,500. That's a quarter of the way to 10,000, or halfway the way to 5,000. Yeah. Small channel. Give me a subscribe if you like these things. Give me a like, give me a comment, see, you know, what you think about these things. Yeah. Okay, so you can sort of see the concept here. So this is going forth from that design. So we have the same thing. We have the suspension just being free. And then this is the advanced part where you'd bring up the ammunition, runs through this advanced rotor, through this connector into this one with an L piece, and then all the guns have access to the ammo because they have ports on either side. That means from down wherever I connect this to, I can have guns which can shoot through and still have the whole magical guns can see, or guns can go through the armor magic, yeah? And just to, you know, this is a bit more of a bigger one, upgrading the turret a little bit. And it's not overly massive. It gets a little bit wide because you have to have at least there to there. So I could trim this off. However, I need this block because of the to basically send a conveyor through. So we're getting close. So this is one design which I kind of like, which makes this thing work. The next design is this one. Who would have thought? Again, using the small connectors. So we have our access point here. So this is where all the inventory comes in. It goes into a hinge, into one of these, connected to that one, connected to that one. So that now means if I put a gun on there, the conveyor system still goes all the way through to the gun. This suspension block is just set to 0 strength and not doing anything in particular. You know, don't need propulsion, don't need brakes, don't need that. And then all of the stuff is done through this hinge. So now if I change the height of a hinge, it passes straight through. You can see where I'm getting at. So this works. It's cool. The only slight problem is because you're on a rotor head off from this, you're always going to be slightly off by half a block. If I was to paint this white, and if I go off this, you can see this is the center of the gun, runs along here. So you're not even quite central, but you're not in a block. You've got that offset. There's not much you can really do about that. But yeah, so this one here, I showed that you can add it to add the connection through all the way to the bottom. And you can also, of course, use it as a turret control. Okay, so if I go into my spectator, you can see, you know, this is using the turret controller. I can turn and I can move the thing up and down. It doesn't have the biggest elevation, but it's, you know, pretty cool. And then the next design is, you know, strapping a couple on, but you can sort of see now where, because it's offset, the guns are sticking out a little bit. You know, it's using the exact same mechanism here as the one before. So this one is, this one's basically an advancement of this design here. Just a little bit cooler, a bit more armored up. And then this design is similar to this mechanism. However, if you notice, it's actually perfectly in the middle. And the way I managed to do that is by actually having two of the suspension arms in here. If I was to duplicate this over here. I don't really want to move that. Remove this. There we go. So we're using one hinge, splitting into a T-piece, which goes to these two guns. And that way, you know, you can have two centered guns, or at least not really centered, but, you know, centered on the turret. They're going to be symmetrical. And I think it's pretty cool. Because then the other thing you can do, you know, is just absolutely armor up all of this part. That doesn't care, you know. You armor that up, you can still just pass straight through it. You can armor it up until about this part here. Which means if I wanted to, I could also armor up all the way to the end of the guns. You know, I could armor up right to just the tips of the guns if I really wanted to and had that all that as just armor. But I'm being somewhat realistic. But again, works completely fine. It's a little bit shaky on one of the turrets. Why is it shaky on one of them? That's weird. But it works. Very cool. Very much like it. I did actually accidentally make a hole. And the one slight thing is repairability is not, you know, there. You have to get these guns out the way to be able to do it. So it swings and roundabouts. It's very cool for armor, but it's like a one-time armor thing. You know, if you lose the armor, you're not being able to replace it easily, especially with welders or anything like that. If you guys have any ideas of how I could do something, or if you have any ideas of how I could, you know, design this mechanism slightly different to make it a bit more functional, let me know. I'll be interested to see what you guys have got. The only other thing I can think of how to have more angle is by having the suspension part and the rotor part closer together. Because then more movement in the rotor is less movement in the suspension. Or should I say, with the limited amount of suspension travel I have here, this hinge will be able to move up and down more. So I'll have to try and, you know, work that one out. But I think it's reasonably sized, you know. The turrets aren't gigantic and it's unique. And I think even if you're not using it as, you know, to exploit it for armor, it allows you to make much cooler type turrets. You know, you're not worrying about, oh no, that's going to clip, which means my gun's not going to work. I think it's really, really cool. But yeah, that's what I've got to show you for today. So hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, as always, remember to hit the like button. It helps me out more than you think it does. And it inspires me to make more of these weird, different videos. Obviously, I like my survival series, but I also enjoy doing these nitty-gritty fun things in this game. It's why I play this game. I love being creative and trying to exploit, or not so much exploit, but mess around with what I can do in this game. But yes, as always, my name's been Quantum Chief, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!